grow more pot. If we're serious about saving the earth, saving the ozone, and our freedom to go about saving the earth and the ozone, we should start by paying all those dirt-poor coca farmers in South America and out-of-work loggers in Fortuna and Eureka and Midwest family farmers and Rust Belt families too, to all get together and grow more pot. Why? Get ready for this. There's a book out. It's called The Emperor Wears No Clothes. The author's name is Jack Herrar. It's published by Queen of Clubs. I think there's ads for it in High Times or NORML, National Organization for Reform of Marijuana Laws. They could direct you to one, I'm sure. And in this book, among other places, it is written, before the 20th century, the marijuana plant provided almost all the world's paper, all the world's clothing and textiles, and almost all the world's rope. According to none other than the U.S. Department of Agriculture, you can make 4 times as much paper from an acre of marijuana hemp plants as you can from an acre of trees. And instead of chopping down all the redwoods in Humboldt County and turning Northern California and Oregon and Washington into Appalachia or the Sahara Desert, if you do it with hemp plants, you can just grow another crop a few months later and make more paper. At 1/4 the cost of making paper from wood pulp and only 1/5 the pollution. The ancient Romans knew this and grew it. Henry VIII made each farmer in Old England grow their share, because they knew if you want the strongest natural fiber there is, you all got to do your part for the king and grow more pot. And we did, too. Guess what Levi jeans were originally made out of? And guess what American flags used to be made out of? And guess what the early drafts of the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution were written on? And if that's too unchristian for you, guess what they made Gutenberg and King James Bibles out of? Guess what you can use to power a car? You can get at least 4 times as much cellulose to make gasohol or methanol from hemp stems as you can from a corn stalk, which along with solar energy would be a great way to avoid dying for oil in Saudi Arabia. In the 20s and 30s, most American cars and farm machinery had the option of running on gas or on methanol. Most racing cars still do run on methanol. And George Washington and Thomas Jefferson grew cannabis on their plantations and smoked it too. In the 1760s in the American colonies, you could even be jailed for not growing pot, because that was part of the key to become economically independent from Britain. Hemp was legal tender in America, a substitute for money from 1630 clear up until the early 1800s. And hemp seeds are a great source of protein, better than soybeans, and it's cheaper than soybeans too, or so says the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Marijuana is legal for medical use in 34 states. Used to treat glaucoma and pain caused by cancer. You can digest more protein out of a hemp seed than a soybean seed. It's even shown some signs of being able to combat herpes. And guess what kind of a parachute Mr. Drug War Junta Man himself, George Bush, used when he bailed out of that bomber in World War II. Hemp was illegal by then, but farmers were briefly ordered to grow it again in this country for the war effort and all, and the U.S. Army had their own stash all along in the colonies and the Philippines. So, how did everything get turned around so damn bad? Doesn't it strike you as a little dumb that we burn oil and choke ourselves and chop down all our trees and ruin innocent people's lives by branding them criminals and throwing them in jails or sending them off to drug camps or taking all their property and selling it before they're brought to trial? In the process, making crack and heroin cheaper and easier to get than pot. Why do we do this when we don't have to? Meanwhile, the police chief of LA, Daryl Gates, gets front page approval for telling a U.S. Senate committee that pot smokers should be shot on sight. Because smoking pot is treason, because after all, it's illegal. Why was marijuana cracked down on? And why was it done so violently? Well, ready?
It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
Hey, has anybody got some Visine? So, I guess the land's, too small to feed everyone Scooby snacks. What do you say, Glau?
The same.
So, I guess we take the neighbor's land. Then they'll, want ours. Because, we all need that green stuff that makes us happy.
Is it money you speak of?
Of course. But, then our next step will be war.
It will. It will.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is just horrible. Words can't express what we're all feeling at this very moment. A great champion has fallen. We'll be back right after these important messages.
Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need.
Everyone's worried about stopping terrorism. Well, it's a really easy way. Stop participating in it.
Can you talk about Latin America's role in the war on terrorism?
Well, first of all, the phrase war on terrorism should always be used in quotes, because there can't possibly be a war on terrorism. It's impossible. The reason is it's led by one of the worst terrorist states in the world. In fact, it's led by the only state in the world which has been condemned by the highest international authorities for international terrorism, namely the World Court, the Security Council, except that the U.S. vetoed the resolution. So we cannot even talk about a war on terrorism without self-ridicule. Whatever's going on, you can like it or you can hate it or whatever, but it's not a war on terrorism, it's some other thing. Well, what's the role of, what was it, Latin America? In this other thing, whatever it is. Latin America has been the target of most U.S. terrorism for obvious reasons. It's close by. And it's kind of interesting to read the Latin American press and to see their reaction to the September 11th atrocities. Everyone condemned them, at least everyone I read, said, terrible atrocities, we've got to catch the criminals and so on. But invariably, there was a little footnote, like in Panama, the press said, yeah, these were horrible atrocities, but they're not unfamiliar to us. And they referred to the bombing of the Barrio Chorrillo by George Bush Sr., which killed, according to them, about 3,000 people in this poor neighborhood in one bombing. This was during what was called Operation Just Cause in 1989, an invasion of Panama to kidnap a kind of minor thug who had stepped out of line and was brought back to the United States, where he was sentenced and is now in jail for crimes, most of which he committed while he was on the CIA payroll. Now, that was Operation Just Cause. The Panamanians remember it a little bit differently, including, for example, this one terrorist atrocity, which, according to them, killed several thousand people. In Nicaragua, the Jesuit University has a major research journal, Envío, one of the major research journals in the region. They described the September 11th atrocities as Armageddon. They said, this is like Armageddon, they're so awful. But then they added, of course, we have suffered our own Armageddon. namely the killing of tens of thousands of people, the devastation of the country. It may never recover. It's now the second poorest in the hemisphere. Those were the crimes of international terrorism for which the U.S. was condemned by the World Court, so they remember that. And so it goes throughout the region.
If you're looking for a mind behind the movement, it's definitely John Searson. He has written this one book, basically saying that in order to save the world, we have to go back to the Stone Age. And the way to get there is to destroy the industries and everything.
I find it kind of curious or strange that I've been called the architect of the tactic of property damage or the black bloc kind of activity. That certainly isn't true.
Searson lives a very, very modest life. And for example, for a long time, his only income, he was making money by giving his own blood.
We're trying to encourage the questioning, just the questioning. Why do people go out there and try to protest or try to, do something? That isn't mindless violence. The mindlessness is sitting there doing dope, watching MTV, and then you go and get a job and you just schlep along. And to me, that's violent. There's more and more signs everywhere that the life of consumerism is really not a satisfying life.
We cannot let the terrorists achieve the objective of frightening our nation to the point where people don't shop. Where people don't shop.
The will to consume terrorizes you. We're terrorized into being consumers. We have the freedom to choose between brand A and brand B and brand C. That's about it for freedom.
We cannot let the terrorists achieve the objective of frightening our nation to the point where we don't conduct business. Where people don't shop.
Yeah, I think there's too much stuff to constantly work and constantly consume. It's madness. It's destroying everything, and it just has to go. I see very little that's worth preserving. I see no value or health in maintaining the system. And to get all these things, it is a matter of coercion after all. People are forced to be in the mines and on the assembly lines. And without that, without these things, you don't have all this stuff. You don't have a world of things that we're supposed to strive after all of our lives. I don't think there's anyone who seriously embraces it, but the inertia carries it forward. It has to be stopped. It has to be destroyed.